Welcome to Metropolitan Community College's kickoff presentation for LGBTQIA plus Pride. My name is Barbara Velasquez, and I'm really excited to be back together with you today and to bring you a panel discussion that has the potential for powerful learning and increased understanding. LGBTQIA plus is an inclusive term that includes people of all genders and sexualities, such as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, questioning, queer, intersex, asexual, pansexual, and allies. While each letter stands for a specific group of people, the term encompasses the entire spectrum of gender fluidity and sexual identities. LGBTQIA plus Pride is currently celebrated each year in the month of June to honor the 1969 Stonewall Uprising in Manhattan. The Stonewall Uprising was a tipping point for the gay liberation movement in the United States. Today, celebrations include pride parades, picnics, parties, workshops, symposia, and concerts, and the events attract millions of participants around the world. Memorials are also held during this month for those members of the community who were lost to hate crimes or HIV/AIDS. The purpose of the commemorative month is to recognize the impact that members of the LGBTQIA plus community have had on history locally, nationally, and internationally. Your microphones are silenced. Please use the chat function to send communications to moderator Barbara Velasquez. Today's program is a time to explore and expand your knowledge about LGBTQIA plus communities. Therefore, we'll have brief introductory remarks by our panelists, and then your questions that you pose to me in the chat will help everyone learn. And I want to make sure you know that I present questions without sharing your names. We want you to feel this is an anonymous and comfortable learning environment. Also watch the chat function for messages throughout the program, such as a link to an online evaluation. So I'm welcoming our panelists, Mark, John, Jennifer, and we anticipate that Lynn may join us as they give you a little background on their life experiences and roles within our communities. And Mark is going to get us started off.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mark Van Kekerix, and just to give you a little bit of information about myself, when we do these kind of panel discussions, we usually just tell a little bit of our story, and then you can ask us questions if you want to fill in more details. So the short version of my story is that I am a gay man. I came out late in life. I was 39. I had already been married once to a woman. I have a son who's now 30. Oh, he'd kill me. 38. And came out at age 39. I got divorced and then came out, and then eventually married a man. And so I've been married to my husband now for 12 years, and we've been together for 16 years. We have 3 wonderful grandsons that my son has given us, and we're grandpa gays. The sort of interesting thing about me is that the generation that I'm from and that I came out late in life, I actually have a little bit of jealousy for those that are younger than me and those that are more that were more determined to be authentically themselves at a younger age. I wish I had been able to do that. I also tell people that in some ways I'm very boring. We're not, when you visualize what a gay person is, particularly when a straight person visualizes what they think a gay person is, I'm not really the one they picture, you know? My husband and I, if one of us was a woman, we'd be indistinguishable from all the middle-aged couples out there. We're pretty boring. But there's value in that boringness too. There's value in understanding how many different ways there are to be gay and how wrong the picture is in people's heads when forced to think of a gay person. So one thing I always emphasize with these panels is please, please ask us anything. We're here to answer your questions, even those weird, embarrassing questions. You're like, I wouldn't really say this out loud in a group of people that I knew, but I'm sort of curious. So I would really like an answer. We'll tell you if there's details that we're unwilling to share because they're too personal, but we want you to ask the question because we want to be able to give you as much information about us and our history and how we connect into the LGBTQ plus community. So with that, I'll let Jennifer, do you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Jennifer Pansing. My husband and I grew up in Lincoln and went to met in high school, married, went to UNL. I taught while he went to law school, and because of the Vietnam War, he served in the military in the JAG Corps for 4 years, and we settled in Omaha, and we've been here since. We have 2 sons, and when our older boy was returning from his Christmas vacation of his sophomore year in college, right before he got on the plane, the night before, he told us that he is a gay man. We are pretty blessed to have acceptance in our hearts, but there were some struggles. Our younger son was a senior in high school, and he was very worried about this if his friends found out. We did get into counseling right away, and the counselor said, well, what if you told your friends? And it was like a huge weight was lifted off our son's shoulders. It's been a journey. It was much different. I didn't have friends who I knew who had gay children and were, I'm sure some did, but who were out. And we shared it with a lot of people. And now I know I'm in a book club of 12 women. And in that group, I think 10 of us have a close, either a sibling or a child who's an out gay person. So, you know, it's a different world than it was. Our son is 53 and he was returning to college that Christmas at age 20. So that's a lot of years of doing this, speaking on panels. And I'm happy to answer questions, and maybe I'll think of some other things to share. How about John? Are you ready to speak, John?
Sure, of course, yes. I'm also old, and I am a trans man. And I transitioned extremely late in life. I was married for a few years in my past, and I have a daughter and I have a grandson. So if you hear baby crying in the background, that's my 5-month-old grandson who's visiting. They leave tomorrow, but they live in DC. But I transitioned extremely late in life, didn't really understand what transgender was, and then began to realize that I was one and had to do something about it. So I've been on a journey just for the last 4 years of my life, starting to take hormones and having a series of surgeries, which are grueling, but in my mind, absolutely necessary. No matter how old I am, I need to do this. My only regret is that I didn't know what being transgender was early in my life, and that I could not have done this earlier. The medical community and surgeries are different than they used to be. They're much, there's been more research done, and the surgeries are much better than they used to be, and they are what they are. There was a part of me being old, I'm 74, that there was a part of me that said, well, you've lived this long, just keep living like you have been. And the answer to myself was, no, I need to be myself, no matter what cost. I have to try this. I have to be who I really am deep in my heart. And so the journey has been arduous in some ways, but also fabulous. I have felt like I've gotten rid of a huge burden of junk that I used to carry around with me. And I finally feel like an entirely whole person. So I'm very pleased to be the trans man I am today and hope my beard grows more. But anyway, any questions you want to ask me? I really am open to any kinds of questions, whether it be about surgery or transitioning or whatever. Transgender people have a little bit different experience than the rest of the LGBT community, because they are, it may involve surgeries to actually physically alter your being. And you've lived as one gender, and then you have to transition to live as another gender. And that is a whole different thing to do. It's changing your clothes, changing the way you walk, changing the way you talk, changing your physical appearance almost completely. And then the cultural things are probably even more interesting, and that takes a lifetime. So journey it is. And that's the way it is. But for me, it's been wonderful. I co-run a support group with a trans woman. We meet once a month here in Omaha. And we usually have about a dozen transgender people that come in various stages of wherever they are in their lives. And we try to give back to other trans people in the community as well.
Great. May I just add something from when you're done, John? I'll just add just a tiny bit.
I'm done.
I wanted to add two things. I think somebody mentioned AIDS, and I will tell you that in 1991, when our son came out, I was almost paralyzed with fear about that.
I can imagine.
That's one thing I wanted to add. And secondly, I wanted to add that I never dreamt that I would have another boy or another son. And we just have our son is married to a wonderful man, and we have our other son is married to a wonderful woman. And we have this son-in-law that I immediately thought of the loss of another daughter-in-law, and that was way before they were ready to make those commitments, but it's been a very blessed journey. I will say that recently I've been extremely upset because of some of the things going on in the country. I haven't been worried. Now I'm worried again about safety and things like that after the situation in Idaho. And I'll just add that and I'll be quiet.
Barbara, what questions do you have for us?
Well, Mark.
Lynn is with us. I'm so happy to say Lynn has joined.
Oh, Lynn's there. Oh, hi,
Yeah.
Lynn.
Hi, Mark. How are you?
Hi, Lynn.
I'm doing great. Please go ahead, Lynn.
Okay.
Introduce yourself.
I'm Lynn, and usually I start off with a quiz. So Barbara, you're going to have to do the counting for me. You can't pass or fail this one, but Mark and Jennifer and I have been doing this for ages, especially Mark and Jennifer, because I'm the youngest of everybody here.
And I'm the oldest. I am.
Just a quick question, and this is personally not saying that you know somebody publicly, but how many of you know somebody who is gay or lesbian or bisexual? And how many of you know somebody who is trans or binary or non-binary? And how many of you know somebody who is intersexed? Because when we first started doing this years ago, we got very few responses to any of them, especially to trans, non-binary, or intersex. And as we've been doing it recently, it seems like just about everybody knows somebody personally who is gay or lesbian, a few more non-binary, and even more somebody who is transgender, and a few who are intersex. One of the questions that I also like to ask is, what is one of the first questions that somebody says when you find out that somebody's pregnant? The most surprising answer that I ever heard was, who's the father? Because that one always surprised me. But I am quite sure that when my parents were asked the question, they thought it was a boy. Well, from the age of 3 to 4, I tried to prove them that they were wrong. Going through school was tough, even being on a wrestling team. I didn't show my nails right to the referee, and it always threw me off because I don't know if you ever do anything where you have a certain routine like golf, where you have to line up a certain way to hit the golf ball. But I was always worried that I would show them, as one of my senior wrestler told me, that I showed my nails like a girl rather than a boy. I always carried my books like a girl. Everybody told me I threw baseballs like a girl, so I didn't make the little league team. And same way all through college, I was called all the names for, as Mark said, he wasn't teased because he was looking like a boy, but I was teased because I didn't look like a boy. I went through a lot of trouble. My first job I lost because they decided I wasn't a boy, even though I applied as the woman that I was. And in 1975, I went back into a closet, found out that's not a good place to hide, but I met a woman, we got married. We will celebrate 42 years together. We have 2 wonderful daughters that both are married now. And in 1993, I had bypass surgery and decided I couldn't live, and I made all the changes that I have now. I also found out about a decade ago that I was born intersexed. The doctors back a long time ago didn't know what to do with you, so they made the choice to make you the gender that was easiest for them. And so they took the one ovary out, sewed up my vulva, and that. When puberty started, I started to grow breasts and go through everything that the normal girls did. But what was interesting, excuse me, when I told my doctor about it, he said, well, I couldn't believe that because you still have one ovary. And they found out that I had that when I had my hernia surgery shortly after my bypass surgery. And he didn't say anything because he thought that I knew, which was kind of surprising to me because nobody told me that. But I found the letter to my grandmother who delivered me. My grandmother was a midwife from Sweden, and the good old doc didn't believe that he had to get there when I was born. So besides being a blue baby, which my grandmother took the umbilical cord and unwrapped it around my neck a couple of times and saved my life, probably damaged my brain in the meantime. But the doc got there in time to sew it up. So the letter from the nurse to my grandmother said something about saving my life and said that they sewed it up and took the one ovary out. But the last line was said, we fixed everything so nobody will ever need to know. And that was the way we treated kids, and we still do. And like John said, there were so many things that were treated shamefully, sinfully, and everything else. And Jennifer mentioned a little bit about that. And it's a good thing that things are more openly in so many ways. And so I'm just going to leave it there because it's good that we have talks like this. And as Barbara mentioned, it's good to have these open talks. And so we will be open to any questions that we have, and we'll go from there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lynn and John and Jennifer and John and Mark, sorry, for getting us going here. So the good news is there are questions rolling in, and I want to thank everybody for that. To start out with, we have an audience member who says, I have a trans son, and as a parent, there's so many questions and advice. Just a sounding board would be amazing for me. What do you suggest that this audience member do? I'm not sure that she is familiar with PFLAG, but.
Uh,
PFLAG is a great
Go ahead,
organization.
John.
I'll let Lynn. Lynn, you can talk about PFLAG.
I would say attend the PFLAG meetings. They meet on the second Thursday of each month. PFLAG was the first national organization to recognize transgender people. And they did that in the last century, which I know sounds like a long time ago, but it's only 22 years ago. But it took a long time for even national organizations to recognize the rights of trans people. And they meet at Countryside Community Church on the second Thursday. You can go to the website or send an email to I answer it, so I'll give you more information there, but it's important to start talking to other parents to get some information and support your child. The Trevor Project is a national helpline for kids, and they, on all their surveys, they have found that just one parent or one adult that will support a trans kid helps so tremendously in preventing suicide and everything else. And the rates just decrease so much that just supporting your child yourself will mean so much to that youth. Those are the two main things that I could recommend right now. And if there's a listen group or any type of support group at the school, have your child join, because the support of anybody at the school or a school counselor will mean so much. Anything I skipped, John? I'm hoarse today.
That sounds good. It sounds good.
All
Can I
right.
add something really
This
quick?
question. Oh, go ahead.
Lynn didn't actually name the statistics, but the latest set of statistics that I read said that an unsupported child who is trans will, there is a 55% chance that they will attempt to take their life before they're 18. If they have at least one supportive adult, that chance drops to 12%. One supportive adult can make the difference between 55% chance that they'll attempt suicide to 12%. So please, be that supportive adult. And this goes for everybody out there who's listening. If you know of a trans child, there's a strong chance their parents may not be supportive. But if you're that supportive adult, if you can be that supportive person, you might be able to keep them alive.
Thank you. And audience members, can you see how great this team works together and supporting each other? So let's continue. John, I believe this is directed to you. However, the question could apply to some of our other panelists. So let's start with John, and if anybody else wants to add. I'm not sure if I missed it, but what was the deciding factor in your making a change in your life?
Well, personally, I had raised my daughter and I was done with that. I had to take care of my mother before she passed away. She was ill for a long time. And after her death, I decided that it was time to work on myself. And well, I joined Match because I thought maybe I needed as a woman, I needed a boyfriend. I went on 3 dates and said, that ain't it. I got to go back to the drawing board here. And I just began to look at every part of myself and try to put together what my deal was, because I had never been comfortable with myself, and it was time to find out. And I worked on myself by myself, and had an online therapist to work on a behavioral issue I had, and then decided to get a therapist and continue on. And it was a huge revelation for me, and it made everything in my life fit together. And I could finally look at myself without shame and guilt, and then begin to deal with the issues that I had, and begin to try to do something about it, which is to live as a transgender man. It's a process. And one of the biggest problems I had, when I realized I was transgender, was I didn't know how my daughter would feel about it. And I had to talk to her about it first, but I also had to learn the words, the right words to even talk about it. I hadn't learned that vocabulary. In the 50s and 60s, you did not talk about such things. And so I grew, then that's the generation I grew up in. So it was very difficult for me to learn a language and learn even the words to talk to myself, and then to be able to discuss it with other people. And when my daughter told me, she had thought maybe I told her that that year with 2018 was going to be different. And we were at a New Year's Eve party, and she said, I said, 2018 is going to be different. And she said, do you have cancer? And then she asked me if I had joined a cult. And then I said no to both of those things. She said, oh, well, you're transgender. Okay, we can do that. And she was fine with it. And then I knew I was able to go ahead and do what I had to do. And my son-in-law both have been extremely supportive and helpful during surgeries and whatever. And it's just been wonderful. And I'm now grandpa to my grandson.
That's so nice.
It's great.
I'm just going to mention something about counseling, because one of the first things we did was because obviously counseling was important for John, but we went to counseling almost immediately, because our son that was a senior in high school we didn't know what to think. He was a senior at Central High in Omaha, and he was extremely popular and a very good student, and he was devastated. And come to find out, what he was devastated about was that his friends would find out that his brother was gay. And the counselor encouraged him not to keep a secret, to tell his friends. And it was like a huge weight was lifted off his shoulders. And, people listening to this probably think, well, this was quite a while ago. And it was kind of shocking, I think, because he told his friends, it's sort of, and we all had permission from our gay son to tell whoever we wanted to. Before he left, he said that. He said, I'm out at school. It's a college on the East Coast. Anyway, it kind of outed us a little closer, but in many ways, I think it was very healthy. And the counselor was very helpful.
Thank you. Any of the rest of you want to talk about something that pushed you to make changes in your life?
It was funny. Tucker Carlson's
Oh,
father outed people back in the 70s. And back then, I only knew 5 people that were gay or trans. And 3 of them were outed because they were in the military. And you couldn't be in the military. And 2 of them ended up being druggies. I don't know what happened to them. One of them ended up dying because of overdoses. One of them was my best friend, Kathy, and she wasn't accepted by her parents, and she ended up committing suicide. And it was one of the things that ended up putting me back into the closet. And the other one was he was a second cousin, and he wanted me to go to San Francisco with him in the 70s, and I didn't go because timing just wasn't right. And Jennifer, you mentioned being afraid of it, AIDS and everything else. He ended up getting AIDS, and I can still remember the fight because he was a good Catholic boy, Roman Catholic. And he came back here, and he couldn't be buried in the family plot because he had that terrible disease at the time. And so they had to cremate him and bury him in a mausoleum. And it was just terrible. And one of the people that Dick Carlson, Tucker's father, outed was Renee Richards, because he had heard that there was going to be this person playing in this tennis tournament that was trans person. And it turned out to be Renee Richards. And Renee Richards was an ophthalmologist and came from a well-known New York family. And I thought, if Renee Richards, with all the connections that she had, couldn't make it in New York, what do you do in Nebraska where there's no support groups, there's no doctors or anything? I had to go to Denver to even find a therapist or anything that would work with me, and I just lucked into it. It was a very lonely experience, just 45 years ago. And it was only because of the support of my family and everything, and having 4 bypass surgeries, that I figured if I was going to live, that I better do it myself. But I wanted to make sure my family stayed with me, especially my wife, because she was the one person that I loved more than life itself. And if she was going to leave me, I wasn't sure if I wanted to go on. She's been with me 42 years. And, you know, sometimes love does conquer a lot of things, but sometimes even love is tough to fight through. And so it was a constant battle even with that. And it took me a long time, a lot of counseling. And counseling is something that I firmly believe that all of us need sometimes in our life, whether we think we're strong or not, that I firmly recommend for everybody. So that's all I wanted to say.
For me, the after getting divorced from my wife, my now ex-wife, um, well, let me take a step back. When you're hiding, when you're in the closet, many of us who are in the closet, particularly when we're in the closet for a very long time, develop self-destructive behaviors. It's really common. Alcoholism, drug abuse, suicide attempts are all much higher in the LGBTQ community, and particularly so for people who are in the closet or who face discrimination daily. And so for me, my self-destructive behavior was to overeat. And that started in adolescence, right about the time that I realized that I might be gay. And it got worse and worse and worse the longer I was in the closet, and to the point where I finally, at one point weighed over 500 pounds and, had trouble physically moving myself out of the house, had to, couldn't drive certain cars because I was too big to fit in them. I mean, things like that. It's embarrassing to say now, but how much it dominated my life to be that oversized person. And that's the thing that drove me to say, I have to change something. I have to fix this thing that has me broken, so badly broken that I'm trying to kill myself by eating too much. I did go to counseling at that point. Unfortunately, I chose the wrong counselor who started me down the path of trying to turn me straight. And so that was a really awful detour because it ended up in a suicide attempt. But I then made my way to a counselor who was affirming and helped me realize how much better my life could be in coming out. But it was that reaching 500 plus pounds that was really the thing that caused me to say, yeah, this is enough. I got to do something. I have to change something. By the way, I'm not a small person. I still weigh about 300 pounds. So it's not like I suddenly turned into skinny mini and so on, but there is a much better place. I'm in a much better place than I was way back when that happened. We still deal with the trauma of our self-destructive behaviors, even after we eliminate the need for them. Self-destructive behavior, alcoholism and drug abuse are good examples of this as well. You fight that the rest of your life, even if you get straight and sober, you fight it the rest of your life. And so that will be me fighting it for the rest of my life.
Those kinds of things become habits for us. And I did that too, self-destructive things, and just had always flagellating myself with lots of guilt and shame. And I was also afraid that maybe my parents had abused me in some way, or I had been sexually abused, or that they had really just wanted a boy, and that was subconsciously they had sent that message to me. And I had to work through that as well. But the shame and guilt can freeze you where you cannot move forward. You are frozen in time and place, and the same things are just looping around in your head and looping around. And until you get counseling to get that out there, be able to look at it objectively, and then be able to do something about yourself, you cannot change. You cannot change. But the depression from stuffing yourself and denying who you are is really self-destructive in itself. It's just overwhelmingly horrible. And I hope that we don't go back to a place like that. And I hope we don't go back to the 50s and the 60s where there was shame around everything sexual, when sexuality is sexuality. It's a spectrum. There's a lot of variety out there. The porn industry is very well aware of that. I don't know why the rest of the world can't see the lucrative value of it, that it's out there, and it's real, and we exist. And, it's really no big deal. just let us be ourselves, and we'll just be happy. We'll be fine. Some of us will have families, some of us won't, but we'll get to be ourselves and we'll be happier people. I don't know. I don't know.
So thank you all very much. And I wanted to tell Lynn, we got several responses to knowing people who are gay, trans, etc. Right? There's 40 some people on here. About 4 people answered, but just the fact that there was not one of those who answered who said no shows us that, as you said, more people are aware. Then, while Mark opened the door to abuse, substance abuse, someone had asked, do you believe the use of substances within this community is higher, lower, or the same as a general population? So you've answered that one. But I want you to know that we specifically have a treatment issues class watching today, and they would like to know, do you have any suggestions for treatment techniques that are most helpful if treatment is needed?
I'll just speak up and say our son and his husband are very involved in AA, and they will be for a lifetime. And I think our son's problems came out from happened because he was young and in college and didn't, even though we were accepting, I think he was not the person he had always thought he was. And he told me once he didn't think it was important that his partner that he eventually married, whoever it would be, it wasn't important that that person also be sober, but he said it is so important and so helpful and they are both, I think many of their meetings are still on Zoom after COVID, but I'll be quiet and let the others who have more personal input with that.
I'll add that I don't know about alcohol and drug abuse. That wasn't my self-destructive behavior. But one thing I will say, and this is based not just on my own experience, but also on talking with some of my friends, if the substance abuse or the self-destructive behavior issues are driven by being in the closet or by being an LGBTQ plus person who is facing a heavy amount of discrimination, you have to realize that counseling can help, and changing your life situation can help with addressing the fact that that was the source of your self-destructive behavior. But you also independently have to address that self-destructive behavior. That's why AA is important. That's why, in my case, I had to address overeating issues and still do, even though I'm completely out, and that part of my life is now, not driving anything self-destructive. It's a tough road. It is really a tough road for somebody who isn't out yet, who's still in the closet, and that's creating those self-destructive behaviors. It's a lot of work. You have to get yourself out of the closet so that the source of those behaviors goes away. But then you also have to address what the issue is. It's a lot of work. I hope that's helpful.
I did some therapy that was like behavior modification because I had a compulsive behavior. I have my own business, and I had a compulsive behavior not to pay my bills and not to keep my files organized for my business. I would refuse to do it. I just could not make myself do it. And I did as in the beginning of my transition, that's one thing I worked on. Was I had a therapist who just did behavior modification to help change those behaviors and gave me tools to help me deal with those behaviors when they showed their ugly head, which they still do. And yeah, I have to be careful of them, but I'm aware of them now. So, I can deal with them, and I have behavior modification things that I can do for myself that are in place that I can use and still use today when when it rears its ugly head and I get lost in the mire and I have to say, no, 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 but it's a habit. And if it's sort of a lifelong habit, it gets compulsive and you just do it. And that helped me for that. Didn't help me with transition, but it helped alleviate this issue it was like, it was a way to punish myself and to make myself feel more bad about myself than I already felt. And then I could confirm what a terrible person I was and how awful I was and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, bad script. It's a bad script.
I'm not sure if percentage-wise the LGBT community has a higher rate of addiction problems than the country as a whole. I read some statistics that says that we do, but there's also a lot of problems when you start reading Ask Amy and all these other things. And I know from working taxes for as long as I did and working on various helplines, sometimes I think this whole country is all messed up in so many different ways that, and you read that we lost over 100,000 people to opioids last year, or whatever year it was that they had statistics. It was probably 2020. We have a lot of problems as a country with addictions and everything else. And when you look at Overeaters Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous, we can't all just be in our gay community going to the casinos and everything else. I think it's just human nature to get addicted to things. And as Mark said, and everybody else has mentioned, we have to fight these addictions. But first, we have to recognize that we have the problem. Because if I can say I don't have a gambling problem or I don't have an addiction to tobacco or anything else, we'll never go and seek help. And it's only when you hit bottom that you start to realize that you have a problem. And we all have our own problems sometimes. And it doesn't matter whether you're President of the United States or the local homeless person. I can go down and work with YES kids, or I can go to the homeless shelter and work with people there. And you can talk to them and still have the same type of responses on why did you end up in the same boat. And it's kind of interesting. And that's why I still think that sometimes we need to spend a lot more money on mental health in this country, and to realize that all of us can have a whole lot of issues that we need to deal with, regardless of whether you identify as one of the letters or you're one of these so-called straight people in the world.
Right. Well, audience members, I'm going to keep going with questions, and I apologize in advance because we may not get through all of them. The next question is complicated, but really, I think, a marvelous question. So I'm going to try to carefully present it so I get it right. A parent who has a trans child, how does this person cope or assist with the feelings they have of losing the child? For example, they lose their daughter but gain a son through the transition. And they want to know how to deal with and cope with that without harming their trans child. Also, this person noted that the person's son attempted suicide 10 times before the age of 10.
Mm.
Does that question make sense?
Yeah, yes,
Yeah.
very much so. John?
I think that getting through more of the transition that I have, I realize that some things about me don't change. Yeah, my gender, how I present has changed, but I'm still me. I'm still me. And actually transitioning, I'm a better version of me. I'm a version that does not have the crap that I had hanging around with me, being in the wrong body, living the wrong way. So you shouldn't think, first of all, I don't think any parent should think they've lost their child. It's not about losing them. It's about protecting them and supporting them and doing the things that will help them to, and that's what we always do as parents. We're always here. I mean, I as a parent, I thought of myself as putting myself out of a job. And because I give my child the skills and what they need to be successful in life. And for a trans person, for a trans child, that would be no different. That is not going to change. I think supporting the child, listening to what the child says is extremely important, and supporting them in what they want to do. Counseling, of course, is paramount. And there are counselors in Omaha that deal with transgender children. I know a psychologist at Children's Hospital who sees transgender children. There are people available for people under 18 to go to therapy with. Also, PFLAG, I mentioned PFLAG again because parents and children can go. It's a family atmosphere. There will be other transgender people there, parents with other transgender children, but you're not losing your child. That is not what this is about. It's about showing that child, helping them to find their potential to be themselves. And that is the most important thing, because it's liberating and freeing to transition. And if that is what they need to do. That's what I have to say about it. And I'm still me. I still like some of the same things I always liked. I was an art historian. I'm still an art historian. I still have my business. I still have my daughter. I like my grandson. I like babies. Okay. And I can be a guy and do those things. It's, whatever. I like to cook. So does Jacques Pepin. So he's my idol. Your child you're not going to lose anything. You're going to gain something.
Just really quick, a friend of mine whose child came out as trans when they were, I want to say 5 or 6, and they went through this whole, a smart friend of mine said, it's not that you lose any part of the child. What you're doing is you're helping them get out of a cage. That's the best. Picture that. It's not that it's not that you lose the daughter and gain the son, or lose the son and gain the daughter. What you're doing is you're helping them break the bars of their cage so that they can be the real person they're supposed to be. I thought that was very cleverly said. Lynn, that was Joni that said that.
I would seriously be concerned about a 10-year-old that has tried to commit suicide 10 times. If they're not getting this kid in for some type of counseling, that is scary, because that's it. Yeah, the kid definitely needs some help, and if the parents aren't looking for a counselor, because there's some good counselors in this city, that helps. If nothing else, Heartland Family Services has counselors that work with people that are trying to commit suicide, and they got to do something and do it fast, because unfortunately the rate of being successful increases every time you attempt it. And I'm not sure what the youth is doing, but I don't want to see another statistic saying that somebody was successful. And Mark was right that in saying that they're not losing somebody, they're gaining somebody. And I would much rather have a son or a daughter alive than somebody lying in a coffin or somebody lying in a grave someplace. It's the only bad thing about having allergies is sometimes I can't tell if I'm crying or it's just my eyes watering. But this one can make my eyes really start to water, because I know way too many families that go through things like this when I answer helpline letters or calls. And I know what it's like going through things like this from my own personal experiences. And from talking to way too many youth and their parents. And it gets to be kind of sad when you listen to parents and youth talking about what can you do, and they're going, I don't know where to go for help. And I keep thinking, I thought the internet was going to solve all these problems. And sometimes I'm going, the internet hasn't helped one damn bit. And our generations aren't any smarter than they were when I was growing up, and we didn't have any resources like that. We still struggle to go through these things. And it's a shame that with all the resources that we have available to us, we still don't know how to use them any more than we did. And sometimes you go, where is Angie for the helplines when we need something for, Angie for get your woodworking and your plumbing and everything else. We need a helpline that makes it easy. But people don't know where to look.
I want to give you some good news. I'm going down farther, and the youngster who had tried so many times went into counseling at age 10. That was 11 years ago. They've had no suicide attempts since he was 12. And he is successfully transitioned as of today. So the good news is his family was able to find somebody, not to take away from the true concern that doesn't always happen. But I didn't want you to leave with that burden about him. We are running out of time. I want to kind of combine some of these, and I'm surprised that we didn't get into this earlier, but we have people talking about adults grooming children to convince them they're trans, LGBTQ, it's the in thing. And so this relates into many things that are out in our political world right now, including Don't Say Gay in Florida, removing textbooks, etc. And another question that goes into this is, how do you practice self-care with the rhetoric with recent laws and media around trans people? I'm going to throw in LGBTQ also. So I'm going to give you some time with that. I know some of our audience may have to leave, but, and I'm hearing from members saying this was a beautiful presentation. John, you did a great job with your beautifully said. I think that's when you were explaining that you were still who you are. So can we end with something about this grooming, this rhetoric about grooming, et cetera, Don't say gay, laws that we're threatened to be seeing across the country?
As far as trans people go, I think the people that I know would rather not be trans. We'd rather be like cisgender people that didn't have to have or feel like we had to have a bunch of surgeries and, be afraid as a trans woman to put on a dress and go out in public. When we first transition, we're afraid to use a public bathroom. We have to hold it and go home. It's not a fun life. And it's hard to transition. You lose people. It's not an easy thing. There's no grooming going on in the trans community. It's not a thing. It's something that somebody made up. It's not real. Nobody wants to be this, but we are who we are, and we need to be who we are. And so we transition, but we do not groom other people to be that, because you can't. What is in your head is in your head. And it's not in anyone else's head. It's just like conversion therapy does not work. And neither does this grooming thing. Is just absurd. I think it's a myth by the alt-right, as far as I'm concerned.
I'm going to second what John said and even go a little bit further. The fact is that me staying in the closet made me 500 pounds depressed and suicidal. Nobody groomed me. The society kept me in the closet, and I became this self-destructive person because of that. And we want people to be out, and those of us in the community work towards making it a world where coming out is easier and coming out is more common, not through grooming people, but through making a world where it's not a place that you have to be afraid to be out. And we're doing that to prevent those kids that are out there who are in the closet now, either about their gender identity or about their orientation, so that they don't end up where we were, so that they don't end up 39 years old, 500 pounds and suicidal. And that's to be rather than to be negatively termed as grooming, what we're doing ought to be applauded, and it ought to be joined by every straight ally out there. What you want is a world where kids are free to be themselves and they don't end up in the suicidal place. That's what we really want. And I'll go one step further. If you hear the word grooming, you are hearing it from somebody who has either been horrendously manipulated by conservative media or is attempting to manipulate you by using the word grooming. If you hear the word grooming come out of somebody's mouth and say, oh, they're just grooming these kids, shut them down right away. They're wrong. They're absolutely provably wrong. Shut them down and push back.
3 cheers for that. I totally agree with you. It's so, the current ultra right situation in our country is very dangerous and very scary. And I think shutting people down and saying it doesn't happen, if someone talks about grooming, I think I'm so with you on that.
And just a quick thing on the don't say gay. I think our sex education needs to be appropriate for any grade. Just like you don't want to teach advanced calculus to first graders, you don't want to teach 12th graders basic math. So it's one of these things that whatever you're teaching should be age appropriate. But just to say you're not going to teach anything, one of the things that I didn't ask this class is how many parents teach you about sex, and it's still amazing the ones that we're able to see. It's still keep your knees together, and if you knock somebody up, you're going to be a father. That hasn't changed much in the last 20, 30 years. If that's what our parents are teaching us still in 2022, that's kind of scary because you're not getting a good sex education if that's all you're learning from your parents. And I still think it's kind of funny. I was talking to some people over the weekend at kind of a family reunion, and it's still amazing in what's a more advanced state than what Nebraska is, that 9 out of 18 kids that went to this one school ended up being druggies from one class. And somehow we're not getting through to kids on some of the basic things that we need to learn. So someplace we're failing kids, and I don't know what we're doing wrong, because this was a good Catholic school that cost a lot of money to go to. And it's not to pick on any religion or anything, but if we can't even keep good kids from a nice neighborhood off of drugs, we're failing someplace. And I think that if we start passing laws that say we can't teach you about sex, we can't teach you about gender, we can't teach you about anything, we're just going to fail even more.
Can I add something really quick about the don't say gay? One of the reasons I was in the closet until I was 39 years old, that I figured out through a lot of therapy, is that I couldn't picture myself in the gay community. The public image of what gay men were at that time, when I was coming out of high school and into adulthood, is basically the 2 things you saw on TV and in movies was they were drag queens and they were AIDS patients. I wasn't either one of those things and didn't want to be. So I struggled with how can I be gay? Am I really gay? Because I'm not those things. I had no images, no positive images of what a gay man could be that I could latch onto and say, yeah, that's me. That's the thing that I want. So when we get into laws like what was passed in Florida, where it's not even allowed for a teacher to say that they might be in a same-sex relationship, or that we're going to ban books that even mention somebody who has 2 mommies, we're creating a scenario where a kid who's questioning their sexual orientation or their gender identity can't even see an image of what their life could be like. And that's going to put them in the closet. And that's going to lead them to be the 500-pound depressed suicidal person that I was.
Yeah, if it hadn't have been for a little piece in the paper that said XGI becomes blonde beauty, I wouldn't have had any idea that there was another person in the world like me. Only I was going to become a red-haired beauty.
You did become a red-haired beauty.
Thanks.
All right. Well, what a wonderful afternoon. I'm just so thankful to our speakers. We have comments calling you positive and courageous, and that our audience members want you to know how very close to their hearts the comments you have are, because of people they know. You're comforting them. You are wonderful. You are dedicated. Thank you. This is super helpful for our audience, more than you'd ever know. This is amazing. I have to leave early, but everything that you shared is just magnificent. I can't wait to meet some of you face to face if you'll be at the Pride Parade. Have a
That's
wonderful day, everyone. You know, it goes on and on. And thank you to the audience. Marvelous questions. Sometimes an audience is very interested in what is being said, but it's hard for them to come up with questions. That was not the case today. And I apologize to anybody who is, you know, saddened that maybe their question wasn't asked, but I think we were able to tie most of it together. So thank you. We really, really appreciate you. Joe, thank you for doing such a good job with our technical presentation. Would you please put up the online, thank you, the online evaluation, and it is in the chat. If you just want to click over there, we do appreciate your feedback. And then I hope some of you will consider rolling out of bed and clicking on a Zoom with us on Wednesday, when Rabbi Sandra Larson, who's the Director of Racial Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for Reconstructing Judaism, is going to present Black, Jewish, and Queer, Navigating Judaism with Multiple Identities and Building Bridges. That's this upcoming Wednesday, 8:30 in the morning, and that is also in the chat. If you click on that link, you'll be able to register and be ready to go for Wednesday. And if anybody doesn't get to that link, come back to me. I will help you again. So thank you, everyone. It's been a great day, and we also put the PFLAG link in the chat for anybody who wanted more information on that. And a thanks to one of our audience members who brought up OATS, or Open Arms Group, which is through the Second Unitarian Church of Omaha. It's a group for trans youth and children. It's been running for many years.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Thank you all. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks, Barbara.
Thank you, Barbara, for organizing us.
Thank you very much. Information is power, in my opinion.
Enjoy that baby.
Yes, I have a baby. Yeah. 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 Thank you. Thanks.